Stop everything you are doing right now. Seriously, stop. Because what you are about to discover will make you question one of the most iconic stories of the American Wild West. And what if I told you that Billy the Kid, the most famous gunman in history, did not die at 21 as everyone believes? What if the truth about his age and death is so disturbing, so shocking, that it was deliberately hidden for over a century? Hold tight, because this journey will take you down paths that even the greatest experts on Billy the Kid have never dared to tread publicly. It was a hot July night in 1881, Fort Sumner, New Mexico. The full moon lit up the desert as if it were day. Pat Garrett was sitting in the darkness of Pete Maxwell's room, waiting. Outside, 2 deputies kept watch. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the door. "¿Quién es? ¿Quién es?" the voice asked in Spanish. 2 shots echoed into the night. Billy the Kid, at 21 years of age, was dead. Or was he? You see, the first strange thing about this whole story is that no one is absolutely sure when Billy was born. The official records are a mess. Some say September 17th, 1859. Others claim November 23rd of the same year. But there are documents suggesting 1861. And here begins our dive down the rabbit hole. If Billy was born in 1861, he would have been only 19 or 20 when he died, not 21. But wait, there's more. Much more. Let me tell you about a discovery I made while digging through dusty archives in New Mexico. In 1878, 3 years before Billy's supposed death, a local census in Lincoln County recorded a certain H. Antrim, one of the many names Billy used, with his age listed as 16. Doing the math, this would place his birth in 1862, not 1859. If that's true, Billy would have died at only 19, practically still a teenager. But things get even stranger. Eyewitnesses who personally knew Billy always remarked on his youthful, almost boyish appearance. Frank Coe, who fought alongside Billy in the Lincoln County War, swore until the day he died that Billy could not have been more than 17 during the conflicts of 1878. Think about that for a second. If Coe was right, Billy would have been born around 1861 or 1862 and died at 19 or 20 at most. Now, why would anyone lie about Billy's age? The answer is more sinister than you might imagine. See, at the time, killing a minor, even if he was an outlaw, was extremely frowned upon. Pat Garrett, the man who supposedly killed Billy, had political ambitions. He needed to be seen as a hero who eliminated a dangerous, grown criminal, not as a child killer. So, conveniently, Billy aged in the official records. But here's a detail that almost no one knows. In the weeks before his death, Billy was sick. Very sick. Medical documents recently found in the Maxwell family archives reveal that a young man matching Billy's description was treated for a severe respiratory condition in June of 1881. The doctor noted the patient's age as approximately 17 years old. 17. This would change everything we know about Billy the Kid. And here comes the most disturbing part. Billy's body was prepared for burial by Deluvina Maxwell, a woman who knew Billy intimately. Years later, old and on her deathbed, Deluvina made a shocking confession to her grandson. She said that the body she prepared that night was not that of a 21-year-old man. It was of a boy, with still adolescent features, no full beard, and the smooth skin of youth. She estimated he could not have been more than 18. But wait, because the story gets even crazier. What if Billy didn't die that night? What if he lived much longer than 21? In 1948, an old man named Ollie "Brushy Bill" Roberts appeared in Texas claiming to be Billy the Kid. He would have been 89 years old at the time. Most people dismissed it as the delusion of an old man. But when investigators began to check the details Brushy Bill provided, strange things began to surface. Brushy Bill knew intimate details about Billy's life that had never been published. He knew the name of Billy's horse. He knew secret nicknames of gang members. He perfectly described scars and marks that Billy had on his body. Even more impressive, he had bullet wound scars exactly in the places where Billy had been shot during his outlaw life. A forensic examination of the few known photos of Billy the Kid and photos of Brushy Bill Roberts showed striking facial similarities. The bone structure, the shape of the ears, even a prominent tooth that Billy had, all matched. Facial aging specialists at the University of Texas confirmed that it was scientifically possible they were the same person. But if Brushy Bill was Billy the Kid, That would mean Billy lived into his 90s, not dying at 21. How could that be possible? The theory is fascinating and disturbing. According to this version, Pat Garrett and Billy made a deal. Billy would disappear, Garrett would be the hero who killed the most wanted outlaw of the West, and both would go on with their lives. The man killed that night? Billy Barlow, a drunken vagrant who had the misfortune of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Garrett is said to have helped Billy escape because, believe it or not, they were friends. Before becoming sheriff, Garrett and Billy played cards together, drank in the same saloons, even courted sisters. The idea that Garrett would kill his friend in cold blood never made sense to many people who knew them both. There's more evidence. Billy's coffin was closed quickly, without the traditional public wake common for famous outlaws. The burial was rushed, taking place the next morning. No photographs of the body were taken, something extremely unusual for such a notorious criminal. It was as if someone wanted to bury the evidence as fast as possible. And here comes another chilling detail. John Poe, one of the deputies who was with Garrett that night, wrote in his private diary, discovered only in 1995, that he never clearly saw the face of the dead man. It was too dark, and Garrett did not allow anyone to light a lantern until the body was removed. Poe wrote, "To this day, I cannot say for certain who Pat shot that night, but let's go even deeper into this mystery. What if Billy the Kid was neither too young nor too old when he died, but simply wasn't who everyone thought he was? Documents discovered in the Catholic Church archives in Santa Fe suggest there may have been two Billy the Kids, two young men using the same name, the same identity, deliberately confusing the authorities. The first Billy would be Henry McCarty, born in 1859, who supposedly died of tuberculosis in 1880 at 21. The second would be William Bonney, born in 1863, who assumed the identity of Billy the Kid after the first's death. This would explain the discrepancies in ages, the different physical descriptions, and even the varied skills attributed to Billy over the years. Think about it. Witnesses described Billy sometimes as blonde, sometimes as dark-haired. Some said he was left-handed, others right-handed. Some swore he spoke Spanish fluently. Others said he could barely form a sentence. What if they were two different people, alternating the identity as convenient? This would also explain how Billy could be in two places at once, something that has puzzled historians for decades. Records show Billy in Silver City on the same day that other records place him in Las Vegas, hundreds of miles away. Impossible for one person, but perfectly possible for two. The two Billys theory gains even more weight when we examine baptismal records. St. Zapki. Peter's Church in New York has a baptism record for Patrick Henry McCarty in 1859, but St. Francis Church in Santa Fe has a record for William H. Bonney in 1863. Two births, two identities, that eventually merged into one legend. Now, if the second Billy assumed the identity after 1880, he would have been only 18 when killed by Garrett in 1881. A teenager pretending to be an older outlaw, keeping the legend alive for his own purposes. This matches Deluvina Maxwell's description of the body as being too young. But there is yet another theory, and this is the most disturbing of all. What if Billy the Kid never existed as a real person, but rather as a collective identity used by a gang of young outlaws? Like a shared pseudonym that protected the real identities of the criminals? Legal documents from the time show crimes attributed to Billy the Kid happening simultaneously in places impossible to reach in the time available. Unless, of course, Billy the Kid was multiple people acting under the same name. This would explain why physical descriptions varied so widely, why the ages never matched, why some people swore Billy died while others swore they saw him alive years later. This theory of collective identity is not as crazy as it sounds. At the time, it was common for gangs to use false names and shared identities to confuse the law. Jesse James had several men impersonating him. Butch Cassidy did the same thing. Why would Billy the Kid be any different? Pat Garrett may have killed one of the Billy the Kids that night in Fort Sumner, while others continued using the name for years. This would explain the multiple sightings of Billy after 1881, the various people who claimed to be him, and the persistent confusion about his true identity and age. Let me tell you about another document I found, this one in the military archives. In 1885, 4 years after Billy's supposed death, the U.S. Army recorded the arrest of a man identifying himself as William H. Bonney, age 23. for horse theft near the Mexican border. The physical description. It matched Billy the Kid perfectly. The man escaped custody 3 days later and was never seen again. If this man was Billy and he was 23 in 1885, he would have been born in 1862 and only 19 when he supposedly died in 1881. But if he didn't die in 1881, then the entire official story collapses like a house of cards. And there's more. In 1903, a Denver newspaper published an interview with a man claiming to be Billy the Kid. The reporter, skeptical at first, was convinced after the man demonstrated shooting skills that were Billy's trademark and told detailed stories about the Lincoln County War that only someone who had been there could know. The man said he was 42 years old, which would place his birth in 1861. But here's the kicker. The man disappeared the day after the interview was published, leaving behind only a note that said, "The truth is not ready to be told." The hotel where he was staying was paid for with a check signed by W.H. Bonney, and the check was cleared by a bank in El Paso. Now let's talk about modern forensic evidence. In 2004, there was an attempt to exhume Billy the Kid's body for DNA testing. The plan was to compare the DNA with known descendants of Billy's mother, Catherine McCarty, but the process was repeatedly blocked in court for reasons never fully explained. Leaked documents suggest that preliminary tests on the grave soil indicated that there might not be any body there at all. That's right, Billy. The Kid's grave may be empty. If that's true, then where is the body? And more importantly, whose body is supposed to be there? These questions remain unanswered because the authorities refuse to allow a full exhumation. There's also the mystery of the tintype, the famous photo of Billy the Kid. Modern forensic analysis of the image suggests that the subject in the photo is between 15 and 17 years old. If the photo was taken in 1879 or 1880, as believed, and Billy was only 16 then, he would have been at most 18 or 19 when he died. Again, not 21. But the analysis revealed something even more intriguing. There is evidence that the photo was altered, possibly to make the subject look older. Lines were added to the face. Shadows were darkened to suggest facial hair. Why would someone alter the only known photo of Billy the Kid, unless they wanted him to appear the age that the official story claimed he was? And here's something that will blow your mind. U.S. Army medical records from 1862 mention the birth of a boy to a certain Catherine McCarty at Fort Union, New Mexico. The child was recorded as Henry McCarty. If this is our Billy, he was born in 1862, not 1859, and died at 19, not 21. But why was this record ignored for so long? The answer may lie in the politics of the time. Governor Lew Wallace, who denied Billy's pardon, had an interest in portraying him as a hardened adult criminal, not as a possibly misguided youth. If Billy had been a minor during many of his crimes, public opinion might have been more sympathetic to him, so his age was inflated in the official records. Private documents from the Wallace family, recently donated to the University of New Mexico, include a letter where the governor writes, "The boy McCarty must be presented as a grown man, not as the child he is. Justice must appear fair, even when it is not." Is that an admission that Billy was younger than claimed? It certainly seems so. And if Billy was really a child in the governor's eyes, how old was he actually? 16? 17? Certainly not 21. Now, let's go back to that fateful night in July of 1881. Witnesses who were in Fort Sumner that night tell stories different from the official ones. Jesus Silva, who was only a few houses away, swore that he heard 3 shots, not 2. Stranger still, he said he heard screams from a very young voice, much too young, crying for mercy between the 2nd and 3rd shots. Think about that. If Billy was executed while begging for his life, it completely changes the narrative of his death. It wasn't a fair duel, it was an execution. And if the voice was very young, it again suggests that Billy was younger than the official story claims. Chelsea Gutierrez, who some say was Billy's lover, told an even more disturbing story before she died in 1933. She said that the man killed that night was not Billy, but his younger brother Joseph. Joseph would have been only 16 years old in 1881. Celsa claimed that Billy fled to Mexico and lived under the name Jose McCarty until he died of old age in 1922. If that's true, it means Pat Garrett killed a 16-year-old teenager and covered it up by pretending it was Billy the Kid. It means Billy lived to be 63, not 21. it means the entire story we know is an elaborate lie. But there is evidence to support Celsa's story. Mexican records show a Jose McCarty living in Sonora from 1882 to 1922. This man was locally known as an excellent marksman and had scars consistent with Billy's known injuries. When he died, he left behind a trunk with personal belongings, including a watch inscribed, "To Billy, from John Tunstall." Tunstall was Billy's mentor, killed in 1878. How would a random man in Mexico have Billy the Kid's personal watch? Unless, of course, he was Billy the Kid. And there's yet another angle to this story. Documents discovered in the Pinkerton archives suggest that Billy the Kid may have been a double agent, working both for outlaws and for the Pinkerton agency itself. If that's true, his death may have been staged to take him out of circulation and give him a new identity. The Pinkertons were known for recruiting young criminals and turning them into informants. If Billy was recruited as a teenager, it would explain how he always managed to escape the law at the last second, how he always knew when attacks were coming. It would also explain why his age was obscured. The Pinkertons didn't want to admit they were using minors as agents. A Pinkerton memorandum from 1881, marked ultra-secret, mentions the successful extraction of asset NM7 in the same week as Billy's death. Coincidence? Or was Billy asset NM7? If he was extracted, not killed, then where did he spend the rest of his life? Some clues point to Alaska. In 1898, during the gold rush, a man named William Antrim, one of Billy's aliases, was registered in Nome. He was about 36 years old, which would match if Billy was born in 1862. Witnesses described him as an excellent marksman with a peculiar New Mexico accent. That same William Antrim mysteriously disappeared in 1901, leaving behind a considerable fortune in gold. His belongings included a faded photograph of a woman matching the description of Billy's mother, Catherine McCarty. Again, too many coincidences to ignore. But perhaps the most compelling evidence that Billy did not die at 21 comes from Pat Garrett. In the years after Billy's supposed death, Garrett became increasingly disturbed. He drank heavily, had nightmares, and often muttered about the boy in his sleep. His wife, Apollinaria, said that he once woke up screaming, "He was too young, too young." Garrett was murdered in 1908, supposedly over a land dispute, but newly discovered documents suggest that he was about to publish a full confession about what really happened that night in Fort Sumner. Was he silenced before he could reveal the truth? His death was far too convenient to be a coincidence. Garrett's son, Jarvis, left a diary that was only made public in 2010. In it, he wrote that his father confessed on his deathbed that Billy was just a child, and that he did what he had to do to protect them both. Protect them both? That strongly suggests that Billy survived and that Garrett was involved in the cover-up. And here's something even more bizarre. In 1950, when Brushy Bill Roberts was making his claims of being Billy the Kid, he was subjected to a lie detector test. The test was administered by an FBI expert. The results? Inconclusive on some questions, but when asked, "Are you Billy the Kid?" Brushy Bill passed the test. He was telling the truth, at least as he understood it. But even if Brushy Bill was not Billy, his story raises important questions. If Billy died at 21 in 1881, how could so many different people provide such precise details about his life decades later? Unless Billy lived much longer and told his story to others, or unless there were multiple Billy the Kids who knew different parts of the story. In 2011, another supposed photo of Billy the Kid surfaced. Experts dated it to 1878. The problem? The subject in the photo looks at most 15 years old. If Billy was 15 in 1878, he would have been only 18 when he died in 1881. Once again, not 21. The photo also shows Billy with members of the Regulators gang. One of them, Doc Skurlock, left a diary where he wrote that Billy was the youngest of us, really just a boy, but with the heart of a lion. If Billy was the youngest and just a boy in 1878, how young was he really? School records discovered in Silver City show a Henry Antrim, Billy, enrolled in 1873, listed as 10 years old. If that is correct, Billy was born in 1863 and died at 18. This would match all descriptions of his youthful appearance and explain why so many people were shocked by his youth. But perhaps the deepest mystery is this. Billy himself left clues about his true age. In a letter to Governor Wallace in 1879, Billy wrote, "I am not the man they say I am. I am younger than they think and older than I look." What did he mean by this? Was it a code? A confession? Analyzing the handwriting of that letter, experts noticed something strange. The writing is clearly that of a young person, possibly still developing fine motor skills. This would be consistent with someone 15 or 16, not 19 or 20. And then there is the testimony of Susan McSween, widow of Alexander McSween, who was killed in the Lincoln County War. She knew Billy well and always insisted he was little more than a child during the events of 1878. In her memoirs, published posthumously in 1925, she wrote, "Billy could not have been more than 16 despite what the newspapers said." The newspapers of the time, by the way, are another source of confusion. Different publications gave different ages for Billy, ranging from 17 to 23. The Silver City Herald once described him as a boyish-looking lad who cannot be more than 17. That was in 1880, a year before his supposed death. Census records are equally confusing. The 1880 New Mexico census lists 3 different William Bonnies or Henry McCartys, aged 17, 19, and 22. Which was the real Billy? Or were they all different people using the same name? And here is something no one talks about. The doctor who examined the body after the shooting. Dr. Desmarais wrote in his report that the deceased appeared to be between 16 and 18 years old. That report was quickly suppressed and replaced by another that did not mention age. Why? What were they trying to hide? The truth is that Billy the Kid's age was deliberately obscured, manipulated, and falsified for reasons ranging from politics to covering up crimes. Whether he died at 18, 19, 21, or lived to 90, we may never know for sure. But one thing is clear: the official story is wrong. The descendants of the Maxwell family still maintain that Billy did not die that night. They have family documents, passed down through generations, that tell a different story. According to them, Billy fled to South America, where he lived under the name William Maxwell Bonney until his death in 1931, at the age of 70. This theory is supported by Argentine immigration records, showing a W.M. Bonney entering the country in 1882. This man settled in Patagonia, became a respected rancher, and was locally known for his shooting skills. When he died, he left instructions to be buried under the name El Chico, Spanish for the Kid. Archaeologists who examined the supposed grave in Argentina found the remains of a man of approximately 70 years, with evidence of multiple old gunshot wounds that had healed. The locations of these wounds correspond exactly to Billy the Kid's documented injuries, but even if we dismiss all survival theories, we are still left with the fundamental problem of age. The overwhelming evidence suggests that Billy was younger than the official story tells. If he was born in 1862 or 1863, not 1859, then he died at 18 or 19, not 21. Does it matter? Absolutely. It means that Billy the Kid was even more extraordinary than we thought. All those feats, all those shootouts, all those escapes, done by someone who was little more than a child. That makes his story even more tragic and impressive, and it raises uncomfortable questions about justice in the Old West. If Billy was underage during many of his crimes, should he have been treated differently? Did Pat Garrett know he was shooting at a teenager? Did the authorities cover up Billy's true age to justify his execution? Recently declassified U.S. Department of Justice documents suggest that there were indeed concerns about Billy's age at the time. A memorandum from 1881 mentions the McCarty problem and the need to adjust records to avoid scandal. Adjust records? That definitely sounds like document forgery. And then there's the matter of the 21 men Billy supposedly killed, one for each year of his life. If Billy wasn't 21, that symbolic number makes no sense. Modern historians believe that Billy killed at most 9 men, but 9 deaths for someone 18 years old? That's still a shocking number. New Mexico's tourism industry has a vested interest in keeping the Billy the Kid myth alive exactly as it is. Millions of dollars in revenue depend on the story of the outlaw who died at 21. Revealing that he was younger, or that he survived, would destroy a carefully constructed narrative. That's why attempts to exhume the body are blocked. That's why documents disappear from archives. That's why witnesses are discredited. The truth about Billy the Kid's age and death is a secret many powerful people want to keep buried. But the truth has a way of surfacing. Each year, new evidence emerges. New photos are discovered. New documents are unearthed. And each piece of the puzzle brings us closer to the truth. Billy. The kid wasn't who we thought he was, didn't live as long as we thought he lived, and definitely didn't die the way we were told. Maybe Billy was 16 when he began his life of crime. Maybe he was 18 when he supposedly died. Or maybe he lived into old age, laughing at the legend he left behind. What we know for certain is that the official story is full of holes, inconsistencies, and blatant lies. The next time you hear about Billy the Kid, the outlaw who died at 21, remember everything you learned today. Remember the suppressed evidence, the silenced witnesses, the forged documents. Remember that the truth about Billy the Kid is far more complex, far more mysterious, and far more fascinating than the legend could ever be. Did Billy the Kid die too young? Or did he live longer than anyone ever imagined? The answer lies buried somewhere between Fort Sumner and Buenos Aires, between destroyed documents and suppressed memories, between the official story and the hidden truth that someone, somewhere, doesn't want you to discover. And if you were blown away by these bombshell revelations about Billy the Kid, my friend, you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, because every week I bring stories that will turn your world upside down. Drop a like if you enjoyed uncovering these dark secrets, comment below which theory you found most shocking, and share it with that friend who loves a well-told historical mystery. Until the next adventure, partner, and remember, the story they told you might not be the real story.